Hey all, how's it going? So what we're going to be doing in this video here is we're going to be creating a custom add-on, and the way that we're going to be doing that is we're going to go through the way of inheriting an existing model and adding on functionality. You can also, another way to create a custom module is to actually just create your own model, but this is probably the first way that I learned, and I think the easiest, so let's just get started with that right now. First thing we're going to do is I have the server pulled up here just so I can show you what the objective is. So right underneath where it says vendor here, what I'd love to do is I would love to just have one field right here saying what this is in shrootbucks, and that will be an integer value. So just a simple thing that we're going to do, but this should show you how it's done. So let's get started. So the first thing I like to do is just create a new folder just to separate out everything, called custom add-ons. You'll want to add that to your run.conf file as well. You can see I already have that here. It's just comma separated. And then what we're going to do actually is I found out this command a couple days ago, and I think it's like a really cool command. I actually didn't know about it before, but instead of making all the folders and all the files, which the accompanying blog post, which is this guy right here, this actually goes through just creating all the folders and everything manually. You can do that, but instead we'll just use this scaffolding command, which I think is pretty nice. So I put it in my pip file right here, just below my server command here. So you'll see what it's doing is it's creating the log like normal, like we have up here, and then the part that actually does it is using Odoo bin and then using scaffold as the sort of subcommand, I guess, and then the name of the module that we actually want. This should actually be, I can just capitalize this to make it, I don't know, look a little better, I guess, and then where you actually want it to reside. So what we're going to do is I'm actually going to open up a new terminal just so I don't have to use that same one and keep it running. So cd odoo and then just pip env run scaffold. And you'll see it just created a shrootbucks folder right in here. Okay, so what we're going to do with this is this gives us a little too much. We don't actually need all this. So controllers, we can delete that. Delete permanently, that's fine. Demo, we don't need any demo data. That's pretty much if you want some actual data to populate, which we don't need. Okay, and we actually don't need the security folder either. Security is used pretty much if we're creating a new model, which we are not doing. So we can go ahead and delete that for now. And then in views, you'll see you have two files here. So this defines everything part of the normal view, and this is everything that's defined like for a report that people are running and stuff like that. So in this case, we do not need this file either. So I'll move to trash. Okay, and then what we want to do is we want to edit these a little bit. this init file right here. We do have the models folder, so we still need that line, but we can remove the controllers folder. Save that. We want to grab the manifest as well. Just give it a short summary. Say calc. That's not how you spell it. Calc Shrewdbox. Just something simple like that. And then we'll grab that. Control C. Take it down here to description. Paste the same thing. My company. Keep all of that for right now. We're not using this security file right here. You'll see that this this data file is it's taking basically all of our XML that we're using, all of the XML, or as you saw with that security, you can also have CSVs too. So we're removing that. We're not using the template file. And then the demo, which actually defines the data that you're using if you're using in demonstration mode, we can remove that as well. Oh, one thing that we'll need is, since what we want to do is we want to build off the purchase module, we want to insert some functionality onto that model. We'll need to just put purchase in as a dependency. If we don't have that, we'll end up running into a bunch of errors saying that the field is not defined on the model, and it becomes really confusing. Trust me, I've run into that several times. Next thing that we can do is, I like the XML files to usually have a name that's consistent with the model. So we'll rename Fuse to purchase order right there. And similarly, what we have to do actually, before I forget, because I will do that, let's rename that to purchase order. So in a similar way, what I like to do usually is all the models that relate to like purchasing. For instance, like the purchase.order model, purchase.order.line, purchase whatever else there is. I like them all to just be in one Python file here, just named as like the big grouping, I guess, if that makes sense. Not sure why that's taking so long. Okay, well, it's renamed. I need to honestly work on this system anyway. And then for the init file for the actual models, since it's not called models.py anymore, we just want to change the inheritance, so it's import dot from purchase instead. Let's see. We'll want to, this isn't strictly necessary. It's something that I like to do, is just to enter an index.html file. So when people are clicking on the module info, they'll actually be able to see like a little description of what it is. Plus, working on like large-scale projects and stuff, it just helps you to be able to see like what the module is and stuff like that. Change logging, anything like that. So it's in a folder called static that houses also all of the JavaScript and CSS files too. So that's why it's got another subfolder named description. And in that folder, then we want to create an index.html file. And we will just say pretty much the same thing, I guess, just calc shrewdbucks. Okay. So let's see. Now I believe I'm just checking my notes on the side. I believe we can get into the actual code of what we want. So what we'll do is we'll start with the Python right here. So this scaffolding, it created a lot of things that are basically commented, so you can comment and uncomment as needed. This up here is just the coding copyright, I guess, for Python files. I think that's more a Python 2 thing, but you can keep it in here. It doesn't really make a difference. Actually, we will just we'll uncomment this part. Whoa, did not mean to do that. Just to uncomment this part right here. We don't want this method. Instead of underscore name, it's going to be underscore inherit. And so this is going to be inheriting on the purchase.order module, or model rather. And the reason why that is you can tell up here in the URL, it says model equals purchase.order. Another way to tell that as well is I have the developer tools on in here just to show you. Oops. Alright, sorry about that. It looks like my server just needed a refresh. Probably was up for a little bit too long. Anyway, so what I was saying is the way that you find out the model is that you look up in the URL here and you can see model equals purchase.order. You can also, we'll be using this later as well, is if you go to edit view form, the naming will change depending, like if you're on a list view, it'll say edit view list or something. But the concept's the same. It'll have this header up here. So it'll tell you that the model is purchase.order. So for now, we will just take that off to the side. So what we want here in this inherit is, we'll say purchase.order. Description, I don't think really matters for an inheritance module, so I wouldn't really worry about that. And then what we're going to do is we're just going to have shrewdbucks. We're going to have it as a char field. We can put it as an integer field, or float for that matter. But for the purposes of this video, where I want to show you how we can use a try and accept statement in the create method, we're going to create it as a char method for right now. I'll show you in a second. So we'll call this shrewdbucks field char. We'll say something like value in shrewdbucks, just something simple like that. And we can also define other things in here as well, other attributes, I mean. So you can define a required attribute and set that to true. That just means that the record will not be able to save without this being defined. So what we also want to do, actually, you know what? First, what we'll do is I'll go on to views in here to show you this part first, so you can see it a little bit more clearly. So what we want is, again, the scaffold brought in a lot of stuff like server actions, window actions, menu items, which we don't actually need right now. So we can get rid of everything up to this point, pretty much. This we want to just uncomment this. Okay. And so this is going to be an inherited field. So the way that we're going to do that is we need the same record model equals ir.ui.view. We will need field name equals. Let me just pull up my notes so that I make sure I have this correct. Inherit underscore ID. Okay, and the ref for this is going to be, okay, do you remember how when we pulled up this edit view form here, we saw a bunch of other stuff. One of them is this external ID here. So this is what needs to be defined in the actual code. So if we go back here and paste this into the ref attribute, it's dot separated. So the first part is saying the module that we're using, and the second part is the actual name that's defined for that form here, which you can find all as part of the external ID. So we will okay, that is self-closing. That's what I was trying to say. For the architecture, this is where the actual field will be defined. So we'll take out these tree tag here. The tree tag is used for a list view, which we're not using, or the other fields at the bottom of the screen, which we're also not using. So what we want here is so the way that Odoo works to be able to kind of place items on the screen is it uses a system of inheritance, right? So what we want is here. I'll set it up a little bit here. And then field. Okay, so this will be the actual Python name here, Shrootbucks. And we'll make that self-closing. Okay, so for the architecture here, if we pull this up again, we can find, it may take a little bit of hunting through the system to be able to find it. Actually, an even easier way is to just, so we want to insert it right after this vendor ID here. So if you're in debug mode here, which you can also get to from the settings page, you just have to enter the debug mode. So you can hover over any field here, So we hover over the vendor field, we find that it's partner_ID. Okay, so that's the field that we want. So we'll bring that over. So by system of inheritance, I mean that you define it right here. Pardon it. Gosh. Oh gosh, now I'm all confused how words work. So you'd find the field here, and then by saying position, using that attribute lets Odoo know that you want to basically just insert something else before or after this specific field. So in this case, we want to insert it after, and that's going to see the DOM elements after they're created. Then after this field is defined, then it's going to put in the Shrewbucks field. Why is this one must be terminated by the matching end tag? Oh, alright. I think I just have one too few. There we go. Okay, so for the rest of this here, the model, again, we can get most of this information from this edit view form. So this is very handy. So here's the model, and here's what this thing is actually called. You'll see is just the dot separated version of the second part of the external ID here. So we want to use that information. So model is just going to be purchase.order. Let me just take a look back at my notes. Okay, so the name is just what we saw in model data here. So it was purchase.order.form. Now for the ID attribute here, that's the last thing that we want to configure. So this is going to be, it's going to be pretty much the same, well, it's going to be whatever ID you want to give this a name for. So what I usually do if you're inheriting something is just tack on an inherit into here. So say like a last dot separated value. But there is a caveat, I guess. If you're naming the ID of a record, that has to be underscore separated. So we'll do purchase underscore order underscore form underscore inherit. Okay, and we'll save that, and we'll save this guy here. And then what we're going to do is we're going to restart the server here, because basically we just added a bunch of code. An all new module pretty much. Bring up the server. Okay, so we want to X out of here and go to apps. And then what we'll likely need to do, this is another thing that you only see in debug mode here, is you want to update the apps list, and that will basically retrieve any new modules that's finding from the code. So we click that guy there, and then we search for, what do we call this thing? Shrewbucks, that works. So click install, and that will take everything and put it into the system. So if we go to the purchase app now, go to create, we see, oh, why is this duplicated? Let me just see why is it duplicated. Okay, there we go. So the reason there were two in there was because I basically just had an old module that I was testing that I coincidentally gave the exact same name to. So I just had to uninstall that module that I put there. So we have this. We can just type in anything here right now, and then we can just do add product, add anything we want, and then save it. So there's no validation in there right now. Ideally, we want that to be a number. So we could use fields.integer, but again, I want to just kind of show you how to like inherit a method too, so that we can actually test the validation on this thing. So just pull back up my notes here. Alright, so what we're going to do is we're going to go over the Python. That's where we can actually do the backend validation. And so what we want to do is we want to insert the create method, right? Because we basically want to say whenever you hit save, the create method is always run whenever the save button is put in there. Well, I guess unless you're editing it, it's either the create or write function, but when you're first making the record, it will be the create method, so we'll stick with that for right now. So anytime that you're inheriting the create method, you have to do it at api.model. So that's a Python decorator, so it basically run some additional code before the module is actually created. So we'll do def create self vals. So this is basic Python inheritance. Since we're acting on an object, we have the self method, self parameter here. And then the vals is basically whatever we're using to create the record in the system. So what we want, right, is we want to vals is Python dictionary. So we want to test if there's a key in there called shrootbucks. So we'll say if shrootbucks in vals, and then what we want to do is we want to basically try and parse it into an integer value, and if it can't be, then we're just going to throw an exception, just saying like it's unable to convert or something like that. So what we'll do here is we'll do a try statement here. Then we can just use the built-in Python int here. And then on every dictionary, since Python 3 came out, you have the .get method. So you can basically pass in any key, and if the key is not defined, rather than throwing an error, vals.get will just return it'll just return none. So you don't have to worry about heading into any unexpected errors with that. So what we want to do is we want to do a try for that, and then if we don't get that, we will catch a value error. That's what is being used if the value can't get converted. And we'll store the error in a variable. We'll just call it VER for value error. That's usually just how I return errors, I guess. And what we'll do is we'll raise, there's something called a validation error in Odoo, those are usually the pop-ups that you'll see on your screen that will say that something is, not defined, or you can basically output any sort of string that you want. So we will do a validation error. We'll use an F string, and we'll just say we're unable to convert. This is what I like about F strings for, like, if you want to use a variable inside of a string value, is you can just put little brackets, and you'll see how the coloring on my screen changed. See, the rest of the color is still green. So the green means it's a string, and the discoloring meant that you can insert a variable in here. So what we'll do is we'll just grab this guy here, just copy it, and paste it into here. And then what we also want to do, or what I usually like to do at least, is also output the error so that it can actually make sense. So validation error is you have to actually import this. So from Odoo dot exceptions, import validation error. See, that'll make that go away. For unknown word. Yeah, that's definitely an unknown word. I just made it up. So what we'll do with that, since this is just a Python change, we're not changing the data schema. You should need to just restart the server and it'll automatically work. I'm not sure though, because it's a new method. Odoo might want you to upgrade the module, but we will find out. Okay, so if I refresh this, and now try to create a new one, do the administrator, put a bunch of gibberish in here, add a product, sure, why not, and try to save it. Then it says that validation error up here, unable to convert blah blah blah, and the actual error invalid literal. So that is, I guess, the whole thing in there. So we can try to create one with a valid value, say like 4 or something like that. And oh, you know what this is I actually made a mistake. So what we want to do is there's no actual return value in here. So what we want to do is, since this is, first of all, we should be returning, but second of all, and we're going to return after the if statement, so that way if it doesn't go in the if statement, then it'll just return the value. Since we're inheriting though, what we want to do is we want to call something called super. And since Python 3, you don't need any parameters in here, so you just say super and then parentheses dot. What are we doing? The actual method name called create. You don't have to use self, since this is being called on the object already, so only pay attention to this one, and you can just hit vals. And then just save that. And again, you won't need to upgrade the module. So we don't even need to refresh the page. I did that before I refreshed the page, but what you can do is, just because you only need to really hit the button again to trigger the server, and you'll see it saved correctly. So that is the whole thing. Again, the link for the accompanying blog post will be in the description of this video. So yeah, thank you so much for watching. This probably went on a little bit longer than I wanted to, but yeah, thanks again.